Now, Iran's foreign ministry tells Al Jazeera the country is attacked by a genocidal regime and it will defend itself with full force against Israel's war of aggression. Well, that follows another night of attacks from both sides as the conflict between Israel and Iran threatens to escalate even. The International Atomic Energy Agency says 2 Iranian centrifuge production facilities have been hit in Karaj and at the Tehran Research Center. Both sites were previously monitored and verified by the IAEA. Some of the equipment at Karaj was reportedly moved 3 years ago. Osama bin Javaid begins our coverage.
Iranian air defenses are still active, despite Israeli and US claims of total control over the sky. And there's been no let-up in the attacks on Iran. There have been explosions in Tehran and neighboring Karaj. The Israeli military conducted a series of strikes in the Iranian capital against what it calls a centrifuge production site and several weapons depots. Israel has killed at least 240 Iranians since Friday. Day 6 of air raid sirens across Tel Aviv. Israeli media says at least 20 Iranian missiles were launched. One landed in central Israel. Firefighters tried to control the ensuing fire, which engulfed several cars. At least 24 Israelis have been killed since Friday. Multiple missiles were intercepted, but because of military censorship, the damage in Israel is not clear. According to available open-source information, Iran has targeted multiple sensitive locations across Israel in its recent attacks. In Tel Aviv, missiles landed just a few hundred meters from the Defense Ministry headquarters, while another strike south of Tel Aviv hit the Weizmann Institute of Science. It's a top research center that's reported to have worked with the Israeli army. Several neighborhoods of the city have also come under fire. Missiles hit residential buildings in Ramat Gan and Petah Tikva. They also destroyed a school in Bnei Brak and killed at least 9 people in Bat Yam. In the north of Israel, a missile struck Haifa's oil refinery, forcing operations to shut down. Haifa was hit again soon after, with homes damaged in the Neve Sha'anan neighborhood. And the only man who is seen to be able to stop Israeli attacks is increasingly poised to get militarily involved. Donald Trump has called for an unconditional Iranian surrender. The US president says, "We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other equipment, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured stuff," adding that nobody does it better than the good old USA. And as the American and Israeli war rhetoric escalates, the entire region is being pushed to war.
I do believe that someone like at his age, and given that he has spent a lifetime resisting U.S. pressure, prefers to go down fighting rather than surrendering. And so the risk is that with the Islamic Republic going down, it would try to bring the entire region down with it. And so the risk of a regional conflagration now is higher than ever before.
There are unprecedented scenes of destruction after Israel decided to attack Iran. And as the attacks continue by both sides, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei says Iran will show Israel, quote, "no mercy." Osama bin Javaid, Al Jazeera.
Well, earlier, my colleague Nastasia Tay spoke to Ismail Baghai, the spokesperson of Iran's foreign ministry, defending itself against Israel with all its force.
I think we have to understand what is going on. This is a war of aggression, full stop. My country has become under an attack by a genocidal occupying regime, and I think this aggression should be seen in continuation of an already devastating war that has been imposed on Gaza, on Lebanon, on Syria, and other countries of the region. So this is a war of aggression, and what we are doing as Iran is defending ourselves with all force.
Are you open to a diplomatic solution, given the potential devastating consequences of continuing this conflict or having it broaden?
Yeah, the point is that whatever happens, today is the 6th day of our national defense against this aggression. And I think this is not only a war on Iran, this is a war on one of the most historic civilizations of the world. This is a war on the whole region. Israel has been trying all along to drag other countries, including the United States, into its filthy war against the countries in the region.
Obviously, a number of Iran's regional partners do host American bases. If the Americans do enter this conflict, can you confirm what you would be willing to do on the soil of any of your regional partners if an attack is launched from a US base on their soil?
Iran has been a very responsible actor in the region. You can see our very good relations with the countries in the region, and that's one of the reasons why the countries in the region have come with one voice in condemning this atrocious attack against Iran. And we really appreciate that. And at the same time, I'm sure that our neighbors, our Arab neighbors, our Muslim neighbors, recognize the fact that Israel has been trying to fight its cruel wars at the expense of others. And I think any American intervention would be a recipe for an all-out war in the region with very, very bad consequences for the whole international community.
Do you feel at this stage that you can trust the Americans to control Israeli actions?
Not really, because, as I told you, we were in the middle of negotiations, and all of a sudden, Israel started attacking Iran. And no one can imagine in our region, not only in Iran, that Israel started this war without prior green light by the United States. So I think what is at stake is the credibility of a country that is supposed to be a global power. What is at stake is the international law that has been almost annihilated for the past 2 years because of all of these atrocities that have been committed in occupied Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, and elsewhere. So I think the whole international community, in particular those who are members of the Security Council, must shoulder their responsibility and have to act in order to stop this aggression.
Regardless of its objectives, are you willing to give up the nuclear program in order to move beyond this conflict and for this conflict to end?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, really. Because, as I said, our nuclear program has been part and parcel of our right under the NPT. So we have not done anything wrong under international law. Our nuclear program started in 1950s, and it has continued for the past 5 decades completely peaceful. So, and I think instead of this question, you have to ask this question from the custodians of the NPT, why they allowed Israel to attack our peaceful installation. This is completely banned under international law. This is completely criminal. And in accordance with Resolution 533 of IAEA's board, any attack or even the threat of attack against peaceful installation of a country constitutes a threat. Now, we are witnessing a serious breach of peace. This is an act of aggression. So I think the international community has to make Israel and its supporters accountable for what they have done as part of their aggression against Iran.
Well, let's unpack this now with our correspondents right across the globe. In a moment, we'll get the view from Washington, D.C., Amman and Baghdad. But first, let's go to Tawheed Asadi. He joins us from Tehran in Iran. So, Tawheed, coming to the latest statements that we've had from the spokesperson of the Iranian Foreign Ministry in an exclusive, unprecedented live interview, the first since this conflict began with an Iranian official, and his warning of bad consequences for the world if the US attacks Iran. How is that message being seen and what is meant by it?
Well, actually, as you said, about 2 hours ago, we had the chance to interview Iran's spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ismail Baghai, and we heard important lines with respect to the latest developments as momentum thrives on escalations with confrontations moving to an unprecedented level. And we heard in this regard, most importantly, regarding the possibility of U.S. probable intervention in this already escalated situation. From what I can say, based upon what we heard from the spokesperson, he is saying that Iran is not interested in getting engaged in a broader confrontation and dragging the confrontation into regional level. He's saying also that Iran is not interested to see other countries getting involved, or the Israelis or the Americans using the lands of other countries to attack targets inside Iran. That's a clear message that we heard from him. Also, he said that we were in the middle of negotiations, because these days there are so many talks about the future of negotiations. He said that on Sunday, last Sunday, it was supposed to, Iran was supposed to be engaged in a next round of Iran-US talks, but still after the strikes happened, he said that the possibility for getting engaged in this round of negotiations just intercepted as we follow the developments on the ground. Also, we heard this two important points. First, he said that we were moving within the trajectory of diplomacy, and still it seems, based on what we can hear from him, there is this interest from Iranian side to get engaged in diplomatic trajectory to solve the issues. But under this circumstance, it seems that the country will not accept it to be under strikes, under military aggression by the Israelis on the one hand, and to get engaged in the talks on the other. So it's looking for a sort of de-escalation to assess the possibility of diplomatic engagement. In this regard, also, he called it as a legitimate right of Iran to have nuclear programs, something from the other side we hear from the U.S. President Donald Trump saying that Iran has to give up, and this is something not to be considered as an option on the table as far as the Iranian statements are concerned.
All right, let's thank our correspondent there, Tawheed Asadi. Let's go over now to Noor Odeh. She's in the Jordanian capital, Amman. She's there because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel and the occupied West Bank. Noor, first of all, let's start with these latest lines dropping the IAEA saying that sites associated with centrifuges have been hit. Are we hearing anything from Israeli officials on that?
Well, Israeli officials and reports in the Israeli media talk about a constant effort by the Israeli Air Force through successive airstrikes to target and debilitate the production of material or parts that go to the nuclear sites, as well as those nuclear sites. The prized nuclear site, of course, Fordo is too fortified. It cannot really be penetrated by the bombs that Israel has. But everything else, Sami, is on the table as far as the discussion and the chatter and the narrative from Israel is concerned. And every time there is a strike, the images are transmitted and disseminated through the Israeli army and celebrated as just another win.
And Noor, we've had a wave of Iranian missile strikes, I think, overnight, including, according to Iranian officials, the first time the use of this Fatah-1 hypersonic missiles, the first time they've been used since this round of the conflict. What are we hearing about the aftermath and damage done by that?
Well, let me tell you what we do know, what has been cleared by the Israeli military censor. 94 Israelis have been treated for injuries from those strikes overnight. There were several volleys, so Israeli citizens had to keep going back and forth to the shelters. I've been speaking to people in occupied East Jerusalem and the rest of the West Bank, and they told me their homes shook as they heard those explosions in the Tel Aviv area. They described the explosions as much larger than the nights before. And indeed, we saw footage of several fires breaking out and firefighters trying to put them out. We even saw images captured on video by eyewitnesses that documented the air defense systems also failing, apparently, or falling within the vicinity of where those missiles made impact. The military censor has almost imposed a blackout on what the locations are. And so we continue to wait and see and watch for leaks, really, to figure out exactly what those sites are. But other locations have been hit before, and we only found out later, hours, sometimes days later, like the oil refinery, like the Weizmann Institute, which is central to the Israeli military efforts and research in that regard. So we will continue, of course, to bring you updates as they become available.
Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe for more.